I'm coming to you with a major new development just reported by the Wall Street Journal, and it changes everything, or at least it should. Donald Trump was personally informed back in May of this year by Attorney General Pam Bondi that his name appears multiple times in the Epstein files. Let that sink in for a minute. They've known for months now. Bondi and her deputy reportedly told Donald directly during a White House meeting that the documents include unverified allegations, child pornography, and sensitive victim information. They said that's why the DOJ would not be releasing any more Epstein records to the public. How did Donald respond? Well, according to the report, he said he would defer to the DOJ on that decision. So, when Donald told the press last week that Bondi never informed him that his name was in the files, I hope you're sitting down. Clearly, he was lying. This directly contradicts what is now being reported. It also blows apart the excuse that there's quote unquote nothing left to release. Bondi had said back in February that Epstein's client list was, quote, sitting on my desk right now, unquote. And now we know Donald's name was in that so called non existent list, and he was informed of that very fact by his attorney general. This is the opposite of transparency. Everything that's going on vis-a-vis the Epstein files and the Trump regime is part of the cover-up, and it is entirely in the service of protecting Donald Trump, who is at the very center of it. We deserve to know what is in these files. In fact, the American people should demand it, and demand it now. All of this is starting to make sense, isn't it? The distractions, the deflections, the three-ring circus, Donald's increasingly unhinged behavior. Because Donald knew this was the truth behind the scenes, he's literally been coaching fellow Republicans how to answer questions about the Epstein files, and he was doing this yesterday. Take a look at what he had to say.
And remember, don't let them forget, it's so important, Obama cheated on the election. Look, the camera just went off. Obama, the red light just went off. Can you believe these people, how bad they are? Obama cheated. When they give you all the nonsense, Obama cheated. And you should mention that every time they give you a question that's not appropriate. Just say, oh, by the way, Obama cheated on the election. You'll watch the camera turn off instantly.
Yes, it is not appropriate for journalists to ask questions about what is actually going on in this country right now, as long as it implicates Donald Trump. What Donald just said there happened at a private GOP reception. The same night, new photos and videos emerged linking him yet again to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, once one of Donald's closest friends. And his most loyal mouthpieces ran with it all day long. Just an hour before the Wall Street Journal dropped the report, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt threw a full-blown circus at the podium, doing everything she could to distract the public from Donald's connection with Jeffrey Epstein, which, by the way, is long-standing and long-known. Who did she bring out to help create more chaos? None other than Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, also known as Putin's girlfriend. Gabbard and Leavitt spent the presser lobbying wild, baseless accusations in hopes of making the Epstein story disappear. Take a look at some of what they dangled in front of the base in order to convince them that there is nothing to see when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein and the files.
A brief summary of the details that you'll find within the House Majority Staff's report in their investigation into the Obama-directed January 2017 intelligence community assessment. The implications of this are far-reaching and have to do with the integrity of our democratic republic. It has to do with an outgoing president taking action to manufacture intelligence to undermine and usurp the will of the American people in that election and launch what would be a years-long coup against the incoming President of the United States, Donald Trump. High-level DNC emails that detailed evidence of Hillary's, quote, psycho-emotional problems, uncontrolled fits of anger, aggression, and cheerfulness, and that then Secretary Clinton was allegedly on a daily regimen of heavy tranquilizers. When you look at the intent behind creating a fake manufactured intelligence document, and what followed afterward can only be described as a years-long coup and a treasonous conspiracy against the American people, our republic, and an attempt to undermine President Trump's administration.
That happened 8 years ago, she alleges. 8 years ago. The American people have moved on. Nothing that woman has said is true. And I am constantly reminded that Donald Trump is good at very few things, but one of them is the following: surrounding himself with the most soulless monsters who are willing to lie and throw out the most grotesque accusations against anybody standing in their way, all again to cover up what could potentially be the horrific crimes of their boss. They're throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks, but it is all smoke and there is no fire. The new evidence Gabbard cited is a newly declassified 2017 House intelligence report from back when Republicans ran the committee. One of its authors is the guy in Donald's back pocket who's currently running the FBI, Kash Patel. This is the same Kash Patel who ranted for years about Democrats hiding the Epstein files, then seemingly helped bury them himself recently. Still, Epstein inevitably came up because that is what people are interested in right now, not ancient history having to do with some fake conspiracy Tulsi Gabbard just pulled out of thin air. Both Levitt and Gabbard played dumb. Here they are again.
On Jeffrey Epstein, can you rule out that he was connected in some way to any kind of intelligence, either foreign or domestic?
I haven't seen any evidence or information that reflects that.
A Florida federal judge has refused to allow the Epstein grand jury materials to be released. Does the president want the administration or Department of Justice to appeal that ruling?
That was just breaking as the director and I were coming out here, so I haven't had a chance to talk to the president about it. I understand there are 2 other requests from the Department of Justice that are ongoing, but I'll let this president speak to whether he wants to see an appeal.
You know, obviously the developments with the Epstein case with the judge, but I wonder, has the White House counsel, the DOJ explored any other documents that could be released to the public that don't have to do with that grand jury testimony?
To my knowledge, the Department of Justice has moved forward with the request to unseal that grand jury testimony, and as you know, they have also moved forward with interviewing Ms. Maxwell, which I believe will be taking place very soon.
Clearly, Gabbard and Levitt had no interest in providing us with any new or relevant information, and they had no interest in answering any relevant questions. So why bother to call this press conference in the first place? Well, that's simple: to distract from the growing mountain of evidence that links Donald Trump to Jeffrey Epstein in ways he does not want to be. Yesterday, CNN published a damning archival investigation. It includes photos and video confirming Donald and Epstein's longstanding friendship, like proof that Epstein attended Donald's wedding to Marla Maples in 1993, a wedding I was at, by the way. Here's CNN with the report.
Trump's wedding to Marla Maples in 1993 was dubbed the wedding of the century by the media at the time. And although we know that Trump and Epstein were friends during this period, this is really the first time that it's actually been reported that Trump invited Epstein to his wedding. This is, we should note, more than a decade before those first allegations of sex trafficking against Epstein. But we can also see him in the background of another picture. That's Howard Stern on the far right, along with Robin Leach from Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. And Epstein is behind them at the wedding, almost seeming to be photobombing them. We also found this photo from just a few months earlier. Donald Trump with 2 of his children talking to Jeffrey Epstein. That's at the opening of the Harley-Davidson Cafe in New York in October 1993. You can see Ivana there. She would have been just about to turn 12 years old in that photo.
It was not the wedding of the century, but yes, there is plenty of evidence showing that Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein socialized a lot. They also found footage of Donald and Epstein chatting and laughing ahead of a 1999 Victoria's Secret fashion show. Again, here's CNN with the proof.
This is from 6 years later in 1999. This video has never been seen before in this context. It shows Trump talking to Jeffrey Epstein just before models hit the runway at the Victoria's Secret fashion show in New York in 1999. You know, the only other video we've seen of the two men was 7 years before this. Trump is at the show with Melania, who is, of course, now First Lady, seated a few feet away from Epstein. You can see them chatting during the show as well. Allegations that Epstein sexually abused underage girls didn't surface until 2005, years after this video was shot.
CNN's Andrew Kaczynski even spoke to Donald by phone about the newly uncovered visuals, and here's how that call went.
We were not on the phone very long. I think our call was about 30 seconds or so. But when I asked him about the wedding photo, he said, he sort of paused for a second and then said, "You've got to be kidding me," before calling CNN fake news and then hanging up on me. Now, in a statement to CNN, White House Communications Director Stephen Chung said this. He said these are nothing more than out of context frame grabs of innocuous videos and pictures of widely attended events to disgustingly infer something nefarious. The fact is that the president kicked him out of his club for being a, quote, creep.
Well, that's not Donald's story, by the way. In the past, we were told that it was because of some real estate deal they couldn't agree upon. But whatever the case, I do agree that this particular kind of documentary evidence doesn't really prove anything beyond the fact that Donald and Jeffrey Epstein were friends. And many of these images occurred years before Jeffrey Epstein's crime came to light. However, the scandal is not about the past. It's about what the Trump regime is doing to bury all of the evidence that could perhaps point in a different direction, that could threaten Donald's political future. And we've seen it is already affecting his poll numbers. A new Economist YouGov poll released Tuesday shows that 56% of Americans disapprove of how Donald's administration has handled the Epstein case. Even more striking, younger Republicans are turning on him. The poll found that GOP voters under 45 are significantly less likely to approve of how Donald handled the scandal, and that's before the latest from the Wall Street Journal. We've seen this before. Donald is backed into a corner. He flails, he lashes out, he blames everybody under the sun except himself. He lies and he threatens. I honestly have never seen him this terrified. I have never seen him this close to losing complete control. And I hope actually we continue in that direction, because we need to double down and keep the pressure on. As I said earlier, the American people deserve to know the truth about what kind of person their president is, to the extent many of us didn't already know that. So let's keep digging. Let's make sure that Donald's Department of Justice does not get away with yet another crime of covering up for what could potentially be his horrific crimes.